is it, Mr. Baxter? What is it you fear?
My wife was warned that I was in danger.
What did she say? What did she say?
Laura!
Please, fetch him back. Let him not go. Fetch him. Fetch him. Fetch him, woman. Fetch him.
I hope it's not another murder. I will pray for you.
Looks like some kind of animal bite.
Maybe. I don't remember.
It was said that a coven of 13 condemned witches held their bloody and orgiastic sabbaths in a stone quarry on the farm.
Coven? What's that?
The witch equivalent of a bridge club.
Picture this. A family pulls up to their new home. It is large. It is old. The paint is peeling in places. But that is fine. It has character. They say, the lawn is overgrown, but that is fine too. They will fix that. There is something about the windows, though. The way they catch the light, or maybe the way they do not. The way they seem to watch you as you walk up the front path. The family laughs it off. They carry their boxes inside. The door closes behind them. It does not close because of the wind. You know that feeling. Maybe you were 12, maybe you were 16, sitting alone in the living room with the volume low because everyone else had gone to bed. The movie was on HBO, or it was a tape you grabbed from the horror section at Blockbuster, the one with the cover art that had been handled so many times the corners were soft and worn, and something happened on that screen that made you reach over and turn the lamp back on. Not because of a monster jumping out of a closet, because of a door that opened on its own. A hallway that seemed longer than it should have been. A house that felt less like a building and more like something that was breathing. That is what we are talking about tonight. Tonight's list covers 7 films from the 1970s, a decade when filmmakers figured out something the monster movies before them had missed entirely. The scariest thing is not what lives inside the house. The scariest thing is the house itself. 7 films where the walls remember, where the rooms choose you, where leaving is not as simple as walking back out the front door. One of these films almost nobody talks about anymore, and it may be the most unsettling entry on the entire list. Not because of what it shows you, because of what it takes from you. So slowly, you do not notice until it is already gone. And before we are done tonight, one moment on this list is going to bring you back to the exact room you were sitting in the very first time you saw it. The exact feeling of realizing the house in the movie was not the only thing that felt different after that night. Let's go inside.
Alcoholism, sadism, bestiality, mutilation, murder, vampirism, necrophilia, cannibalism, not to mention a gamut of sexual goodies. Shall I go on? The spirit of Emmerich Belasco does not prowl this house. Neither does his son. There is one thing, and one thing only in this house. Mindless, directionless power.
You're wrong, Dr. Barrett. You're so wrong. You cannot destroy a spirit. All you will do is send it from one hell to another.
Didn't you ever leave this house when you were alive? Why? Did you despise the sunlight? Was it better hiding in the shadows?
I don't know you people. Why are you here? No one could really see you then, could they? No one could find out your secret then, could they? I don't want to hurt you. I must. Get out of this house before I kill you all!
How did it end?
If it had ended, we would not be here.
The Legend of Hell House, 1973, and the fear it sells you is not the fear of dying inside a place. It is the fear that the place already knows you are there and has been waiting. Belasco House has a reputation that precedes it like a cold draft under a closed door. The most dangerous haunted house in England, they call it. A physicist and 2 mediums are hired to spend a week inside and produce scientific proof of life after death. That is the assignment, clean professional. They bring equipment, they take notes. What they do not account for is that Hell House is not passively haunted. It is actively hostile. The house has absorbed decades of cruelty from its former owner, and those walls do not just contain that history. They conduct it, they push it outward, into the people who walk its hallways, into their thoughts, their relationships, their sense of what is real, and what the house is putting there. What makes this film different from every other haunted house picture of its era is the intelligence behind the threat. This is not a ghost story, this is a siege. The house studies its occupants. It finds the weakness in each one and applies pressure there, precisely like a finger pressing a bruise. The tension does not come from jump scares. It comes from watching 4 rational people slowly become something the house has decided they should be. The peak moment is not loud. It is a room that should be empty that does not feel empty. A silence so specific it has a shape. You are watching someone stand very still, and you understand before they do that stillness is no longer a choice. Hell House was never given a sequel. Hollywood never tried to remake it. That restraint may be the most respectful thing the industry ever did for a horror film, because some houses should only be entered once.
It all began as a summer vacation. A young family found a beautiful old house. It had secluded, spacious grounds, a large swimming pool, magnificent furnishings.
So you are the people who want to rent this house?
What do you mean it's $900? And then it's what?
Well, there is one other thing. It's hardly a catch.
They thought it was the answer to their dreams, but it was the beginning of a nightmare. In this old house, up this staircase, behind this locked door, something lives. Something strange. Something powerful. Something evil.
Stay away from the door!
It will possess this woman. It will destroy this man. It will terrify this child. And no one can stop it. Burnt offerings.
Have you actually tried to tell me that this house is responsible?
This house is destroying us.
This house is getting so cold.
And this house will be here long, long after you have departed, you believe?
God, when it comes alive, tell them what it's like.
Behind this door lies a horror beyond imagination. Who is it? Where did it come from? What does it want? When you find out, it will be too late. Burnt Offerings.
Burnt Offerings, 1976. And the fear here is quieter than anything a monster could manufacture, because the house does not attack you. It simply makes you an offer, and you accept it without realizing you already have. A family rents a sprawling, decaying estate for the summer. The price is absurdly low. The owners are eccentric, the terms unusual, but the house is beautiful in the way that very old, very hungry things can be beautiful. There is a room at the top of the stairs they are asked to leave a meal tray outside of each evening for an elderly woman who never comes out. The family agrees. That is all it takes. From the moment they carry their bags through the front door, the exchange has begun. What separates Burnt Offerings from every other haunted house film of its decade is its central mechanic, and it is one of the most genuinely unsettling ideas the genre produced in the entire 1970s. The house is not haunted. It is alive, and it feeds. Every crack in the plaster seals itself overnight. Every rotting shutter straightens. The garden, which was dead on arrival, begins to bloom. The house is healing, visibly, incrementally, magnificently, and the energy it is using to do that is coming directly out of the family living inside it. The father becomes erratic. The mother becomes obsessed, spending hours in a room that seems to need her there. The son grows pale. The aunt, who was sharp and funny at the start of the summer, begins to fade in a way that feels less like illness and more like something being slowly drained. The peak moment does not announce itself. It is the mother standing at an upstairs window, looking down at her family in the yard below, and the expression on her face is not worry or love or recognition. It is something closer to satisfaction. The house is looking through her eyes, and it likes what it sees. Burnt Offerings left behind no franchise, no remake, no cultural shorthand. It was seen by a generation of late-night television viewers, and then quietly forgotten by everyone, except the people who watched it alone, and found themselves thinking about it the next morning, when they came downstairs and the house they lived in felt, just for a moment, slightly different than it had the night before. The question it leaves you with is not whether you would have rented that house. You already know you would have. The question is how long it would have taken you to notice.
That's the deal of a lifetime. So, what's the catch?
There was a crime, a murder.
In the house?
And several people, a family.
Accused claims he heard voices coming from within the house.
Well, houses don't kill people. To a perfect house, and to a perfect family.
Who are you talking to?
The girl who lives in my closet.
And what's her name?
Jody.
What's the matter?
Just seeing things, I guess. Why don't you come back to bed?
I can't sleep. My mind.
There was a family lived here some time ago. They had a similar problem.
I'm living in their house. We need to get out of here. Just pack up and go.
Everything we have is in this house.
It's okay, Mommy. Jody won't hurt you. The man who lives here, she says it's bad.
And sanctify this house.
Open the door! It's not opening! I can't open it! George? There's something evil in my house.
The Amityville Horror, 1979. And what made this one land differently than anything else on this list is the two words printed on every poster, every paperback, every VHS box that sat in the horror section under that iconic house with the quarter. Moon windows staring out like eyes based on a true story. You can debate the facts now. People have for decades, but in 1979, sitting in a theater or on a couch with the lights off, that disclaimer did something to the nervous system that no amount of special effects could replicate, because the Lutz family was real. The address was real. 112 Ocean Avenue, Amityville, New York. You could drive there. Some people did, and the house was still standing. The film follows George and Kathy Lutz, who purchased that house at a price too good to be true, 28 days after a young man murdered his entire family inside it. What follows is not a ghost story in any traditional sense. There is no single specter drifting down a hallway. Instead, the house works on George the way burnt offerings worked on its family, gradually, from the inside out. He stops sleeping. He sits by the fireplace at 3 in the morning and stares. He gets colder, angrier, more unreachable. In increments so small that Kathy keeps telling herself, it is stress. It is the new house. It is the winter. The horror of the Amityville Horror is the horror of watching someone you love become a stranger inside a place that was supposed to be home. The house itself is the film's most carefully constructed character. Those upper windows appear in almost every exterior shot, framing the building like a face. The basement, painted red, functions as the building's nerve center. A room the family priest cannot enter without becoming physically ill. A room that seems to exist slightly outside the logic of the rest of the structure. The house knows where its power lives. The peak moment is a window, a child's bedroom window, a pair of glowing red eyes looking in from outside in the middle of the night. Not a monster, not a figure, just eyes, patient and still, at a height that suggests whatever is out there is very large and has been standing there for some time, watching a little girl sleep, waiting for an invitation that the house has already extended on its own. The Amityville franchise became one of the most exhausted horror brands in Hollywood history. Sequel after sequel diluting the original until the name meant almost nothing. But the 1979 film, watched alone, at the right hour, still does what it was designed to do. It makes you aware of your own house in a way you were not before you pressed play. The sounds it makes at night, the rooms that are dark when you are not in them, the fact that you do not actually know everything that happened inside these walls before you arrived. 28 days. That is all it took the Lutzes before they ran. The question the film never quite lets go of is not whether the house was really haunted. It is whether 28 days would have been enough for you to leave everything you own behind and never go back.
Looks like some kind of animal bite.
Maybe. I don't remember.
Said that a coven of 13 condemned witches held their bloody and orgiastic sabbaths in a stone quarry on the farm.
The coven? What's that?
The witch equivalent of a bridge club.
Some houses do not haunt you with what is inside them. Crowhaven Farm haunts you with what the land itself remembers, and what it has decided you owe it. Crowhaven Farm aired as a television movie in 1970, which means an entire generation encountered it the way they encountered most things that followed them home. Late at night, alone, on a screen that was never quite bright enough. No theatrical release, no franchise, no cultural conversation. Just a film that quietly entered the nervous system of everyone who happened to be watching ABC on the night of November 24th, 1970, and never fully left. Ben and Maggie Porter inherit a New England farmhouse from a distant relative. It is remote, it is old, and it is exactly the kind of fresh start that people in troubled marriages move toward when they have run out of other options. What they do not know, what Maggie begins to sense before she can articulate it, is that the farm is not empty of its past. The land has a long memory. It remembers the Puritan community that once lived there. It remembers what that community did to the women it decided were dangerous, and it remembers Maggie specifically, because Maggie has been here before in a way that the rational part of her mind cannot accept, and the part of her that stands at the edge of the property at dusk already understands completely. What makes Crowhaven Farm so quietly devastating is that it operates without a single conventional horror mechanism. There is no creature, there is no haunting in the Hollywood sense. There are neighbors who are too friendly, too patient, too willing to wait. There is a child who appears at the edge of the property and watches. There is a growing sense that the farm is not a place Maggie and Ben moved into. It is a place that has been arranged around them, carefully, for a very long time, like a room prepared for guests who were always expected. The peak moment arrives without warning and lands like a stone dropped into still water. Maggie finally understands what the land wants from her, not her fear, not her sanity, her surrender. The farm does not need to frighten her, it only needs her to remember. And when she does, when that recognition moves across her face in a single unbroken take, the cold that comes off the screen is not the cold of a ghost story. It is the cold of inevitability, of a door closing that you did not realize had been open your entire life. Crowhaven Farm left behind nothing. No sequel, no remake, no home video release for decades. It existed in the memory of the people who saw it the way certain dreams exist. Vivid, unshakable, and impossible to fully describe to someone who was not there. If you mention it to the right person of the right age, something happens in their expression. A recognition, a slight pause before they answer. The land remembers. That is the film's only argument, and it is enough.
What is it, Mr. Baxter? What is it you fear?
My wife was warned that I was in danger.
Please, fetch him back. Let him not go. Fetch him. Fetch him. Fetch him, woman. Fetch him.
I hope it's not another murder. I will pray for you.
Don't Look Now, 1973. And this one does not give you a house. It gives you something worse. A city that has learned the shape of your grief and built a maze out of it. Venice should not be frightening. It is one of the most photographed cities on earth, written about by poets, painted by masters, visited by millions of people every year, who walk its bridges and eat at its cafes and take pictures of the light on the water. Nicholas Roeg understood all of that, and he used every bit of it against you. John and Laura Baxter arrive in Venice after the death of their young daughter. John is there to restore a church. They are trying, in the quiet, desperate way that people try, to move forward. Venice does not allow it. The city is a labyrinth of narrow passages and dead, and canals of bridges that lead to other bridges, of alleys that narrow as you walk deeper into them. It is a city with no straight lines and no clear exits, and Roeg shoots it that way. Always slightly disorienting, always pulling the frame just far enough off. Center that you feel the ground shifting under you without ever being able to say exactly why. What separates Don't Look Now from every other film on this list is that the building doing the hunting is not a single structure. It is a place, an entire geography, that has absorbed a father's refusal to accept what he already knows. John has a gift he will not acknowledge. He sees things before they happen, glimpses of a future he keeps rationalizing away. Venice seems to know this about him. The city arranges itself around his blindness, the way a trap arranges itself around its target, patiently, without urgency, because it already knows how this ends. The figure in the red coat appears early, and keeps appearing, glimpsed at the end of a canal, disappearing around a corner, always just far enough ahead to follow. John follows. The city lets him. The alleys get narrower, the light gets worse. The sounds of the water get closer from directions that do not make sense, and then a door at the end of a corridor opens. And what is standing on the other side of it is not what John thought he was chasing through the streets of Venice for the entire length of the film. That final image does not fade. It sits in the mind the way certain memories sit, not in the part that processes narrative, but in the part that processes danger. The part that activates when a hallway feels longer than it should, or when you round a corner in an unfamiliar city, and something in your chest goes very quiet. Don't Look Now was never remade. There is a version of Hollywood that tried to acquire the rights, and a version of that story where everyone involved eventually decided some things should not be touched. The film leaves behind one unanswered question that has nothing to do with ghosts or architecture. It is a question about the moments in your own life when you knew something was wrong and kept walking toward it anyway, because knowing and stopping are two completely different skills, and most of us are only good at one of them.
私あなたを救えなかった。眩しくて怖いのよ、日の光が。かからないわ、故障よ。
Hausu, 1977. And if every other film on this list whispers, this one screams. Not in fear, but in a kind of delirious, wide-eyed joy that is somehow more unsettling than anything a quiet corridor could produce. Nobuhiko Obayashi made Hausu the way a fever dream makes itself. Without permission, without apology, without any apparent interest in the rules that every other horror film of its decade was following carefully. A Japanese schoolgirl named Gorgeous travels with 6 friends to her aunt's countryside home for the summer. The aunt has been waiting a very long time for visitors. The house has been waiting longer. What happens next is not a haunting in any sense that the Western horror tradition had prepared audiences for, which is precisely why it works the way it works, which is to say completely, and under the skin, and in a way you cannot easily explain to someone who has not seen it. The house in Hausu is not a location. It is a living organism with a personality, an appetite, and something close to a sense of humor about both. The rooms do not simply trap the girls, they consume them, each in a manner tuned specifically to who that girl is, what she loves, what she is afraid of. The house knows them. It has the patience of something that has been hungry for a very long time, and has learned to make the meal last. Obayashi shoots all of it, with a visual language borrowed from silent film, from television commercials, from anime, from experimental cinema, cutting between registers of reality so rapidly that the audience loses its footing, the same way the characters lose theirs. And by the time you realize the film has pulled the floor out from under you, you are already falling. The peak moment is a piano. A girl sits down to play. The piano plays back. What happens in that room, in that sequence, is the clearest possible statement of what Hausu believes about the relationship between a house and the people inside it. That the house does not merely contain you. It incorporates you. It makes you part of itself. And it does so with an enthusiasm that is almost affectionate, which is the detail that makes it impossible to shake. Hausu was dismissed in Japan on release as too strange, too undisciplined, too much of everything at once. It took decades, and an American theatrical re-release in 2009 for the film to find the audience it deserved, which turned out to be enormous and passionate and entirely made up of people who watched it once and immediately needed to call someone. It spawned no sequel, no remake, no franchise, because there is no framework into which Hausu fits except its own. The house in this film is not a villain, it is not a threat. It is something stranger and more permanent than either of those things. It is an appetite that has been waiting in a building at the end of a country road, and it does not discriminate, and it does not stop, and it is having the time of its life. The question Hausu leaves behind is not whether the house is evil. It is whether evil is even the right word for something that simply is what it is. Completely, and without reservation, the way a house is always just a house, until the moment it decides it is something else entirely.
It's one of the nicer tree-lined blocks in New York, and only 20 minutes from the center of town. Oh, and just around the corner, there's the supermarket and the cleaners. That's Father Harron in 5A. He's blind.
Blind? Well, then what does he look at?
There is danger everywhere. There is evil. Evil everywhere. Turn around, Allison. Look behind you. There is horror. There is darkness.
I think Allison may die.
But watching, waiting, warding off evil, there is hope.
I call thee! May horror and confusion expedite our glory!
Is the Sentinel the only thing that stands between the mortal world and the torment of hell? Between happiness and horror?
She went to a party with 8 dead murderers.
Eli Wallach.
Doesn't everybody?
I've had a noisemaker.
Sylvia Miles.
Nobody has lived in that building for 3 years.
Ava Gardner. Martin Balsam. Jose Ferrer. Arthur Kennedy.
There is danger.
Swear to God, I'll kill you!
Chris Sarandon.
I'll kill you!
Burgess Meredith.
Welcome home.
And Christina Raines. The Sentinel. The most frightening motion picture experience of your life. And the most revealing. Turn around. Look behind you.
Be one with us.
No!
There is evil everywhere. And the Sentinel is the only hope. The Sentinel.
The Sentinel, 1977. And this is the one that saves the worst revelation for last. Not what lives inside the building, but what the building actually is, and what living inside it will cost you for the rest of your life. Allison Parker is a fashion model who moves into a beautiful Brooklyn brownstone. The rent is reasonable, the apartment is spacious. The building has character, high ceilings, tall windows, the kind of pre-war architecture that makes Manhattan real estate listings use words like charming and historic, and full of potential. There is one neighbor she never sees clearly, an elderly blind priest who sits at the window on the top floor, day and night, never moving, never sleeping, facing out toward the street. The building manager mentions him in passing. Nobody thinks much of it. Allison begins to have trouble sleeping. She begins to hear things, movement in the apartment above hers, which should be empty. She begins to meet the other tenants, who are warm and welcoming and slightly, persistently wrong in ways she cannot articulate. A retired judge, a ballet dancer, a woman with a cat. They introduce themselves with the careful friendliness of people who have been waiting for you specifically, and they invite her in, and the apartments they live in do not look like apartments that anyone actually lives in. They look like rooms that have been arranged to look like apartments. What the Sentinel understands about architectural horror, that almost no other film of its decade articulates this clearly, is that the building itself is a threshold, not a haunted house in the traditional sense, a door. The brownstone sits at the boundary between the world Allison can see and something on the other side of it that has been pressing against that boundary for a very long time. The blind priest at the top, floor window, is not a neighbor, he is a lock. And the church that owns the building has been placing someone in that room, in that chair, at that window, in an unbroken line stretching back further than anyone in the film will say directly. The peak moment is a staircase, and what Allison finds at the top of it, not a monster in any shape the genre had prepared her for, but a gathering, a corridor full of figures that should not exist in a building in Brooklyn, in 1977, or anywhere, or in any year. They are not threatening her. They are simply there. The way the building has always been simply there, patient and permanent, waiting for the current occupant to understand what she has moved into and what her presence in that apartment means for the rest of her life. The Sentinel was controversial on release for reasons the advertiser. Friendly version of this video will simply describe as bold casting choices and a willingness to go further than most studios would have permitted. It was not a box office success. It was not embraced by critics. It found its audience the same way most of the films on tonight's list found theirs. On late night television, on worn VHS tapes, in the dark, with the volume low, with no one else in the room to tell you it was just a movie. What it leaves behind is a specific and durable unease about tall buildings with too many floors and neighbors. You have never quite managed to get a clear look at about the apartments above yours that sometimes sound occupied when the building manager has told you they are not. About the fact that every building you have ever lived in had a history before you arrived, and will have a history after you leave, and never asked your permission for either. The priest is still at the window. Someone always has to be. 7 films, 7 buildings, and not one of them needed a monster in a mask or a creature in the basement to make you afraid to turn the lights off. That is what the 1970s understood about horror that the decades before it had been circling without ever quite landing on. The most frightening thing is not what lives inside a place. It is the place itself. The walls that absorb what happens inside them. The rooms that remember. The architecture that was never as neutral as it pretended to be. These films did not scare a generation with what jumped out of the dark. They scared a generation with the dark itself, with the quiet, with the particular feeling of standing in a room you know well, and suddenly, for no reason you can name, feeling like the room knows you better. Hell House studied its victims and applied pressure to exactly the right places. Burnt Offerings made a trade so gradual you would not notice the cost until the summer was almost over. Amityville took the one place that is supposed to mean safety. Home, your home. The place you chose and paid for and filled with your family, and turned it into the threat. Crowhaven Farm reached back 300 years and reminded you that the land under your feet has a longer memory than you do. Don't Look Now built a city-sized labyrinth out of one man's refusal to see what was directly in front of him. Hausu consumed its visitors with a joy that was almost affectionate, which is somehow the worst version of being consumed. And the Sentinel revealed that some buildings are not homes at all. They are posts, and someone has to stand watch. What connects all 7 of them is something that has nothing to do with filmmaking technique, or decade, or budget. It is a single question that every great haunted house story is really asking underneath everything else. When you walk into a place and something feels wrong, not dangerous, not threatening, just wrong, in a way you cannot source or explain, do you trust that feeling, or do you tell yourself you are being irrational, carry your boxes inside, and close the door behind you? Most of us close the door. That is why these films still work. Now we want to hear from you. Which scene from tonight's list is still living in the back of your mind? Which film do you think deserved a higher spot, or a spot on this list at all? And where were you the first time one of these films made you reach over and turn the lamp back on? Tell us in the comments. That is where the best conversations on this channel happen, and we read everyone. If tonight felt like the right kind of sleepless, hit like, so we know to keep going. Subscribe if you want to be here for what comes next. And what comes next is this. The 1970s gave us the house as monster, but the 1980s gave us something the previous decade had not quite dared to try. Horror villains so specific, so iconic, so permanently embedded in the culture that Hollywood has been trying to replicate them ever since, and has never quite managed it. Next time, we are going inside the decade that made the slasher, the supernatural killer, and the kind of screen presence that follows you home in a way no building ever could. The VHS is already rewinding. We will see you in the dark.
Subscribe for the next nightmare.